Hi everyone, this is librarian Colleen, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make these pretty watercolor flowers on reused book pages. I hope you guys enjoy. So first things first, you guys are going to get your supplies. So in all of your kits, everyone should have 3 watercolors and a few pages of the book to get started with. As you can see, I only put a very tiny amount of the paint in my little holder because with the watercolors, less is definitely more. A little bit of paint goes a very long way. Off to the left, I just kept a spare piece of paper to work on to try to make sure that the color was right before I used it. Depending on how much water you use in the paint, it's obviously going to be much lighter or much darker. So I do recommend having just like a little scrap sheet with you to make sure that you are getting the right color that you want. So to get started with my pages, I just went really simple and made like little lavender flowers by going just back and forth basically with lines of one stacking over the other. Obviously my hand's in the way right now while I'm painting, but as you can see, just very simple, and I kept the paint pretty dark and I just have it sped up so you guys don't have to watch me do it in real time, but I just went ahead and made a few flowers across this first one, as you'll be able to see. So here I'm actually getting the page a little bit wet first, and I'm going to try to use the watercolor to just fill in those spots. This I was finding to be a little bit more difficult than just using the paint itself, but I was trying to get some different colors within the one petal, and it definitely worked for that purpose, and I think it still looked pretty regardless. So then right here, as you'll see in a minute, I'm just going back in and filling in the flower a little bit more with more petals, and just used a really fine little brush and kept the paint pretty saturated. I didn't water it down too much so that it wouldn't spread on the page. So now as I'm getting ready to add more flowers, I'm just going to use that scrap page again, and I started to just test the consistency of the paint and the color as I added more water. And again, I definitely recommend doing this. As you could see by those lines that I made, the color is much darker when you don't add water versus how light it comes out when there is a bunch of water. I think it's also a little bit, harder to control when it gets watery, so you want to just be careful and make sure you do a bunch of testing before you go in and start doing the flowers, as I'm doing here. So now I'm going in and doing some stems for the flowers. Again, off to the side, I was testing the color. And as you can see in the dish, again, I'm just using a really small amount of paint. You really do not need that much. The amount that you have in your kits should go a very long way, especially if you make the color nice and light with a lot of water. And then later on, I ended up mixing some of these colors as well when doing the stems, and everything just came out very pretty. I would say just experiment a lot and take the time trying to find the color that you want. So here, because I did the flowers so light, I actually went back in and kind of outlined them. And for this, I didn't put any water on the brush. I just let the color be very dark, very thick. And I just went in and added some depth onto the little petals. And I thought this looked very cute. And once everything dries, it will get a lot lighter. So just keep that in mind. And I honestly felt like mine were getting too light, so I went in and added even a little bit more. So for my next page of flowers, I really just did a bunch of dots. I was hoping to make it have like a hydrangea-like look, and I do think they came out really pretty. I just had some be dark, some be a little lighter. I ended up mixing the colors, and I definitely used a lot more water on this page, and I think that helped with how they came out. So as you watch, you'll see how I just add different dots of different sizes and the amount of color, and it all comes together very nicely. So for these, when I went to do the stems, as you can see in my little dish, I did a lot of mixing with the colors, and I thought that this came out really nice, and it was super easy. I just got a little bit of paint from one, a little bit of paint from the other, and I did make sure there was a little water in there. It made it easier to mix, but I think the watercolors are so nice for that because you can get some really pretty colors out of that, and then you can just change the tone by adding water. So for this page, as you can see so far, I went in really nice and dark with the paint on this one. I used basically no water. I wanted to keep the colors really dark. And as I go, I did the same thing. I kind of kept it really, really dark and saturated, and I didn't go too crazy with the design. And I didn't end up doing this in the course of the video because everything, you know, had to dry and all, but I do think it would be really nice to go in later with like a paint pen or a marker and kind of trace over or outline these flowers. That's what I had in mind when I kept them so dark and like kind of not like shapeless, but pretty blurred. I thought it would be nice later to go back in with a marker. So if you wanted to do something like that, I also think that would come out really pretty. So for this last sheet, I did that same method that I started with of making lavender type flowers, where you're really just stacking one line over the other. And this is super easy to do, but I think they come out so pretty. For this one, I had a bunch next to each other and I had them kind of going downward. As you can see later, I add like a branch so that they're all kind of hanging off of that one branch. But I think that these are really easy if, like me, you're not the most talented. I think that they're really easy to do and they always come out really cute. So here you can definitely see where on certain petals as opposed to other, I added more water or less water. The color just changes very quickly depending on how much water you add. And I would definitely say that when making smaller, finer designs like I'm doing right now, to make sure that you're very careful with how much water you use, or it will probably get messy pretty quick. So now at the end, I came back to these flowers that I had intentionally left a little bit shapeless. And I didn't have a paint pen with me at that time, but I just decided to go back in with the paint and leave it basically really dark, like fresh out of the bottle, almost no water. And I just went back in and added some shape and some design to these flowers so that they weren't really just so blobby. And it comes together really nicely. And I think this is a really easy way to do it if you're not sure how you want to paint the shape. Alright guys, so that was how I painted my 4 book sheets. I hope that you guys enjoyed, and I hope that you guys make something else awesome with your sheets. And if you want, you could always share them with us at the library and we would love to see them. Alright, thank you guys. Have a great day.